Welcome! In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to block shadows. And if you haven't seen color blocking yet, you want to go back and you want to start color blocking first. That was in the video previous to this one. In this assignment, I'm going to show you how to open it first. So you should be saving each time that you leave Photopea because it does not save for you. If you exit Photopea without saving, you'll probably have to start from video 1 and start all over again. So let's start off by opening. If I go to File and Open, there's also an Open from Computer button. Your file should be saved somewhere that you took notice as to where you saved it to. If you didn't save it somewhere where you know where to find it, then shame on you. You should organize a little bit better. That's on you. You can't call me over to help you. I don't know where you saved it. So you're going to click on your assignment. One thing you can do is usually you can start typing in the name of the file, and it'll pull it up for you. Once it's open, you'll see that all of the layers are still there, and even things that have been locked or hidden are also still locked or hidden. So for this part, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to start locking our photo and selecting areas that we're going to be adding shadows to, right? So for example, if I'm going to start on the face here. So if I select the face, I need to put a new layer on, and this layer I'm going to call Face Shadows. And there are already areas that of shadow that are a different color, and I could technically say that there are shadows in this already, but if we look at the original, image, you can see that there's shadows that make up the nose, and I just don't have those shadows in this. You can also see that there's a nicer transition between these areas, which I don't have on here. You can also see that there's shadows around the eye, around the iris, in the hair, and I don't have any of those. So it makes it look very flat. Since I want it to be a little less flat and I want it to look more like a painting, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to start to block in some shadows. So in order to do this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select an area that I want to work on. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to use my selection tool, which yours might look like a magic wand. It's 3 down from the top. But you want to go to quick selection. Once you're in quick selection, you're probably going to have a little bit of lag for a minute. You'll go over, you might need to make your brush larger, which if you click up here, you can find the size, or you can use the right bracket and that'll make it bigger. And then you can make sure you're on the right layer. I need to be on the face layer. And I'm going to select the face. Now it selected way more than I needed. So I need to go up to subtract, and I need to click on the areas, train it that I don't want certain areas to be selected. And that's real easy to do. I can make my selection tool smaller. I can select or deselect a few other things. Oops. If you make a mistake, just do Control Z. And if you're having trouble selecting an area, it's easy to just zoom in. Try again. The hotkey, by the way, for the quick selection is W. It does not want to deselect this small part. Let's see if we can do this. Sometimes you need to train it, and sometimes it's really frustrating to train it. Be patient with it. You can see that it's being really annoying right now. Sometimes that happens. But be patient. And if I zoom in, you can use this brush. Sorry, not the brush, the selection tool. Select only these little parts here. All right. So now I've selected everything that I wanted to keep. Can even deselect a few other areas if it's a little nuts. There we go. Ah. If you hold down Alt, that is the hotkey to switch it over easily to subtract. Okay. So here we go. I think I have everything I need selected now. And now I can start working on blocking shadows. So for blocking shadows, the best way to start is to go in and actually just hide the face, right? I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of text messages and it's loud. So once I've blocked in the face, or once I've selected the face, I can see my shadows, or hidden the face layer. I can see my shadows, and now on the face shadows layer, so make sure you're on the right layer, I can start to draw in shadows. Make sure you've got a dark color. You could do a darker version of the color that was there, or you can just put in black. It doesn't really matter because we're going to be blending these eventually. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to go into all of my darker areas, and I'm going to start to just draw in some shadows. Right now it's at 100% opacity. Bring this down. 100% opacity and 100% hardness. You can change the size to whatever you need. Remember to use those hotkeys to help that with that. Now, when I'm drawing things in, I am using a mouse. It's a little easier with a mouse. But if you don't have a mouse, you might notice that it's kind of wiggly, that it's really hard to control, and you might get really frustrated. So let me show you what this does up here. If I go up to the smooth tool and I change this, here, let me draw a line first. So I'm drawing a line, right? It's a wiggly line, and it shows every little itty bitty part of that line. If I go to the smooth tool and I turn this to 90, when I draw my line, it's a lot smoother. It's so nice. Look at these cool tats I'm giving me on my face. Alrighty, so smooth tool is really great to keep you from wiggling while you're trying to draw lines. It does create a little bit of lag though. So if you are struggling with that lag, like I am because I'm recording at the same time, you may feel fine with just doing 0% smoothing and winging it. So I'm going to go to all of my areas that do have shadows that I know that I have not drawn in. And I'm going to start to add in some shadows. I have a pretty big shadow on my nose right here. I'm going to trace. And remember, you're just tracing the photograph. You don't need to redraw from scratch anything. If you want to get rid of a pimple, you could do something like that. But I'm just asking you to retrace what you are seeing. And do your best to. If you make a mistake, you can always undo. You can also use the eraser tool and you can erase. A lot of times I'll kind of overshoot. And then go in with the eraser tool and fix things up. Looks like I got a black eye. Somebody broke my nose. So it is gonna like initially kind of look funny. I'm gonna keep going, but I am going to pause the recording, so that I can pick up again and we can talk a little bit more about adding in or softening or adding more shadows into another spot. So, or softening shadows is probably more what I will want to talk about. So, I'm going to, you've seen so far how to do this. I'm just going to keep working. I'm going to select other areas. So, if I bring the face back, you can see that you're starting to see more of the face show up. But now I can start to work on deselecting. So, remember to deselect, you can go through the menu, which is really slow, or you can click on Control D and it will deselect. Then I can go in and work on this area right here. So I'm going to go ahead and use my quick selection tool. I'm going to select the area that I want, which I need to make sure first that I'm on the right layer. And then I'm going to continue my shadows on this one. Once I have everything I want selected. Oh, right. I do want to select these. Alrighty. So now that I've got these selected, I can go ahead and start working on shadows here. Oh, I am going to deselect these little doodads here. I don't want those. Oops. I think too, I'm going to possibly do my hair shadows on a totally different layer. So I will just focus on doing the face shadows. Okay, so now I can start painting in here, working on hiding the face, making sure I'm on the face shadows, and start to paint in these face shadows. Like I said, I think I'm going to do the hair shadows on a separate layer. So for right now, I'm just going to focus on doing the skin shadows. So painting in these next. All right. So in here, I've got these shadows here. So I'm going to definitely make sure to paint these in this zone. Eventually, I'm probably, oops, eventually I probably am going to need to deselect and connect them. So if I deselect, I might need to paint in this area, right? So, like I said, I'm going to pause. And while it's paused, I'm going to go in and add more of the shadows. Okay, so once you have your face shadows blocked in, you'll have something that kind of looks like this. It looks a little wonky. Let me zoom out. Looks a little wonky. That's okay, because we haven't done any blending yet. So what I'm going to show you now is if I take my eraser tool, which the hotkey is E, and I go in to the opacity, and I change the opacity and also change the hardness, now I can go in and I can erase parts. Now, I need to have a pretty good reference here. So sometimes what I'll do to make my reference more visible is I'll move it up and I'll just put it on top of everything. And then I'll take the opacity and lower it. And that way I can kind of see what needs to be lighter. So I know that this area needs to be a little darker. So if I take the opacity of this and I lower it, I can kind of go in. You can even leave the opacity at 100 if that's easier for you. So you can see that this area needs to be a lot lighter. So I'm going to go in, make sure I'm on the right layer, the face shadows layer, with a very low opacity and a very soft brush. I'm going to bring the hardness all the way down to 0. Now I can go in and I can start to erase. Now, I eventually want to get rid of the edges. Don't want to see edges here. And all I'm doing is erasing my face shadows, right? Look at it again. I can see that I need to erase the edge here too. And I might go, I like where this is at right now. Got a little bit I need to get rid of right here. And the more times I click and drag, it will change and erase those areas. This has to be quite a bit lighter too. And if I change the opacity to a little brighter, then I can focus in and erase those edges entirely. All I'm doing is softening the edges of my shadows so that I end up with something that's similar to my photograph. Right? I want to go in here, do a little bit more right here. And if I go, oh no, I shouldn't have erased that, it's easy fix. You just take your brush, the black, and you add more in. And you can even add the black in with a very low opacity brush. So now I have this area up here. This needs to be pretty low opacity, or it needs to be pretty light. So I can go in and I can start to erase. Now in some areas I have this violet here, and that violet's already going to increase the brightness of it. And it might kind of throw you off a little bit, which is okay. We're going to be blending the colors a little bit better later. For now, just focus on the shadows. They're a little more shadowy here, or less shadowy here. Let's look here. And if maybe we experiment with this a little bit. Oop, wrong one. This one. It might help you to keep you from having to jump back and forth. If you kind of keep this one visible and work on your shadows while it's visible. Now I can hide this, and you can see that I'm starting to have a nose there. It's starting to look like a nose. Now I'm still seeing some outlines, so I probably want to go in and blend that a little bit better. Go in over here. I can start to soften this area quite a bit. And this area quite a bit. There's nothing wrong with experimenting too. So if you find that you hate something that you did, it is so easy to erase. Don't be afraid to play around with those values. Create something similar to what you're seeing in the photograph. Already, it's starting to look like it has a little bit more realness to it. It's looking a little bit more like human being and less like a cartoon. Right? So that's where you're headed with this. Keep working on it. You can see I haven't done very much, but already I've made a massive improvement to what it looked like before. And make sure to continually save as you're working. So if I do Control S, it will save. It'll overwrite my previous file, and I can keep going from there. All right, so you're going to make your shadows and you're going to start to blend your shadows. Don't be afraid to venture out to the clothing, to the hair, to anything else that might be in that photograph as well. All right, and I will talk more about blending these colors once we get a nice blend on our shadows. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something.